How many times have you heard this over the past week? The 2025 NFL Draft is officially in the books. It's one of those classic sports cliches, but now that it's done, let's take a look at some free agent targets for the Atlanta Falcons. Here's the scoop. After May 1st, any signings won't affect your future compensatory draft picks. So if you lose a bunch of players in free agency, you can get compensatory picks in the next year's draft, which can range from rounds 3 to 7. The value of these picks depends on how good the players were, the size of their contracts, and how well they perform the following season. It's a bit of a secret formula the NFL has, and many teams might wait until after May 1st to make moves, so they don't offset any departures. With the Falcons making 5 selections in the draft, it's time to address some roster holes that could be filled with a few veteran players still available. Let's kick things off with my first free agent target, Zadarius Smith, a defensive end who played for the Browns and Lions last year. He was traded mid-season to Detroit after they lost Aiden Hutchinson. Now here's the deal. Even though he played for 2 teams last year, he still managed to rack up 9 sacks, which would have led the Falcons by a wide margin. Sure, in 2023 he only had 5.5 sacks, but he generated a ton of pressure for Cleveland. That was enough for Andrew Berry and the Browns to give him a 2-year contract. Zadarius has bounced around a bit, starting in Baltimore, but he's versatile. He's played both as a defensive end and an outside linebacker. When he was with Green Bay and Minnesota, he was an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense, and with the Browns in a 4-3, he shifted to defensive end. This kind of flexibility is something Atlanta could really use. While they did add James Pierce and Jalen Walker in the draft, they didn't pick up a traditional defensive end. Last year, they brought in Ruka Roro, but he seems more like a replacement for Grady Jarrett than a classic 5-technique defensive end. Morgan Fox did join from the Chargers in free agency, but if Terry Fontenot is thinking, hey, I've already borrowed 2 draft picks from next year, it feels like this could be an all-in season for him. He might not want to leave anything to chance. With Zadarius Smith on the market, he could step in as a defensive end, rotating in for passing situations. Imagine saving him for 3rd and long, using Zach Harrison and Morgan Fox on 1st and 2nd down, and sprinkling in Smith for about 15 snaps a game. At his age, I still believe he can deliver a solid number of sacks, and the Falcons should always be looking to improve their pass rush, given their history in that area. Now here's a quick question for you. Will there be a Falcon who gets 10 or more sacks this year? If I had to pick one, I'd go with Leonard Floyd. If you're thinking about Jalen Walker or James Pierce, keep in mind that the last rookie to hit 10 or more sacks in a season was Micah Parsons back in 2021. No one has done it in the last 3 years, and only 5 players have managed it since 2016. Chew on that for a bit, and I'll share the other 4 players at the end of the video. Now let's move on to the next guy, a player we've talked about a lot this offseason, quarterback Asante Samuel Jr. He's still a free agent, and honestly, I'm not quite sure why. The only reason I can think of for why Asante Samuel Jr. is still on the market is that shoulder injury he suffered last year. It might be worse than people realize, and he hasn't been passing medical evaluations with flying colors. Looking at Atlanta's quarterback room, they didn't draft a traditional corner, so if they were eyeing a corner who went before them, they might still be feeling a bit uneasy about the position. With some solid defensive backs like Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman coming in as undrafted free agents, it's clear they're not fully satisfied with their cornerback situation. That's where Asante Samuel could be a perfect fit for the Falcons. Last year, he played in a Chargers defense that relied heavily on zone coverage, and the Falcons weren't far behind in that regard. From a schematic standpoint, he'd fit like a glove. Now let's talk production. In his first 3 seasons, he recorded 2 interceptions and double-digit pass breakups each year. Unfortunately, His last season was cut short due to that shoulder injury. But if the Falcons feel confident about his recovery and his price tag drops significantly, would you rather have Asante Samuel in the nickeler role with Dalford and Clark Phillips? Personally, I'm taking Samuel every time. Sure, you could factor in the development of Phillips, Bowman, and maybe even Kobe Bryant, one of the standout undrafted free agents. I get it. There's a desire to trust your homegrown talent and develop your own guys. But I apply the same logic here as I did with the potential acquisition of Zadarius Smith. Terry Fontenot traded a first and a fifth-round pick for next year's draft, and it feels like he's under some pressure to deliver this season. If he wants to make an instant upgrade, imagine a secondary with Samuel, Watts, Bates, Terrell, and Hughes. It would be a no-fly zone. Now, before we move on to the next two players, I want to take a moment to remind you that we're just 20 subscribers away from hitting 36,000. If you haven't already, click that subscribe button and help us reach this milestone. We're bringing you the best free Atlanta Falcons coverage on YouTube. The third guy I want to highlight is a center, Nick Harris. Now, this isn't as flashy as the first two names, but I think it's a more realistic option. For one, he'll be much cheaper than Smith and Samuel, and for two, he fills a bigger position of need. Harris was a fifth-round pick by the Browns in 2020 out of the University of Washington, but he's had some tough injury luck. In the 2022 preseason, he tore his ACL just 5 snaps into the first game when he was set to be the starter. That injury sidelined him for the entire 2022 season. When he returned in 2023, he found himself without a starting job because the guy who replaced him played exceptionally well and has held on to the starting position since then. If the Falcons feel they need to bring in more competition for Drew Dalman, Harris could be a solid option. He was once slated to be a starting center and has shown he can perform well when called upon. Unfortunately, after that injury, he fell down the depth chart and never got the chance to climb back up. And just when things seemed to be looking up, he broke his leg in a game against the Eagles early in October 2024. If the medicals check out, and that's a big if considering the torn ACL and fractured fibula, bringing in Nick Harris could be a smart move to add some competition for Drew Dalman. Worst case scenario, you end up with a more competent backup in Harris, who was once slated to be the starting center for the Cleveland Browns, if not for those injuries. Now let's dive into my last free agent target, and I guarantee it's going to surprise you. But first, if you're a big Georgia fan, or like me, you're a fan of the Vols and want to snag a James Pierce Jr. jersey, check out the link for pre-orders. Once the jersey numbers are finalized by the players, they'll ship it right to you. Just remember to use the link provided in the comments and description of today's video. It's a great way to support the channel while getting your hands on a Fanatics Atlanta Falcons jersey. Now back to my fourth free agent target, kicker Eddie Pinheiro, who previously played for the Carolina Panthers and was once the kicker for the Chicago Bears. After the Bears brought in Cairo Santos, Pinheiro found himself sidelined due to injury, and when he got healthy, the job just wasn't there for him anymore. Given how poorly Younghoe Koo kicked last year, it's definitely worth discussing a potential kicker acquisition. Here's a fun fact. At one point, Pinheiro was the NFL's all-time leader in field goal percentage, provided he had a minimum number of attempts. Sure, he missed a few kicks towards the end of the year with Carolina, but that's the nature of kicking. You miss one, and suddenly you have to hit 3 more just to balance out the percentage. If the Falcons want to bring in some competition for Koo, Pinheiro could be a solid starting point. He's shown he can perform well, and it's crucial to address the kicking situation after last season's struggles. Kicking is a black and white job. You either make it or you miss it. Unlike quarterbacks, where a great pass can be ruined by a drop ball, a kicker's performance is straightforward. There were way too many misses last year for Koo to just stroll into Flowery Branch for off-season workouts thinking, yep, it's my job and I don't have to worry about anyone else. I definitely bring in some competition. So what's your confidence level in Koo bouncing back? Rate it for me on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm sitting at about a 5.9. I want to believe he can turn it around, but sometimes kickers get the yips and struggle to recover. After reviewing these 4 free agent targets, I couldn't find a 5th one that felt realistic, so I didn't want to throw something out there just for the sake of it. Now I want to hear from you. Who would you like to see the Falcons sign? Is it one of the players I mentioned or someone I left off the list? Scroll down and join the conversation in the chat. I'll catch you all next time.